The bustling Rouen street of the France Empire thrummed with life. Carriages clattered against stone, voices melded into a harmonious murmur. Inside one of the finer carriages gliding through the city, Olivia Madeline sat in composed silence. The eldest daughter of House Madeline, her silver hair shimmered in soft curls, and her green eyes, distant yet alert, peered past the carriage window. Opposite her sat Sally, her young maid, full of bubbling excitement that barely fit within her petite frame. Sally, hardly able to contain herself, practically bounced in place, her thoughts circling around the upcoming Monday, when Olivia was expected at the palace once more. The very idea sent her imagination soaring. The crown prince had sent for her again so soon, only days after their last meeting. To Sally, it was the kind of gesture pulled straight from a storybook. Olivia, the belle of a royal romance. But Olivia's only response had been a quiet nod, her lips forming a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't share Sally's glee. Her gaze drifted back to the window. Romantic, she mused internally, though the word felt like a delicate shell, hollow and echoing. Olivia had been betrothed to the crown prince since childhood, a union born of political convenience rather than love. Though she harbored unspoken feelings for him and clung to the hope that he might one day return them, her efforts were met with indifference. She often recalled their first meeting on his 11th birthday, a moment that had once seemed full of promise, but over time became a painful memory as her dream faded under the weight of neglect and disillusionment. Back in the present, Sally's gasp snapped Olivia out of her reverie. Her eyes sparkled at a boutique window displaying a glimmering pink gown, Madame Pluto's latest design. Sally whispered how beautifully it would suit Olivia, eyes full of longing. But Olivia's thoughts immediately turned to her younger sister, Ethella. She instructed Sally to invite the boutique to the estate next week, not for herself, but for Ethella. Sally's hopeful expression faltered, a pout forming on her lips. Olivia always wore somber hues. A bright dress would suit her more, Sally thought, if only the young lady allowed herself something so radiant. Olivia smiled, quiet and knowing. That brightness wasn't meant for her. Just then, hushed voices from nearby drew Sally's attention. Two women were gossiping, their glances sharp and unapologetic. They whispered Olivia's name with venom, that illegitimate one, questioning her worth, her status, her engagement to the crown prince. Sally bristled with fury, but Olivia remained still, her expression serene, as if the cruelty had long since become background noise. She reminded Sally that this wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last. She suggested they check the mail. Perhaps today there would be a letter. Letters had become Olivia's quiet salvation. A year ago, after her brother Jade refused her care packages, she had been using the alias Live Green. The supplies were accepted and then came a letter, unsigned yet addressed to her alias. Since then, a tender, anonymous correspondence had begun. Though the letters had stopped 6 months ago, she held on to hope. Perhaps he was simply busy. The war had turned. Surely he was safe. Sally, ever the optimist, suggested checking the mail and buying a diary, but their outing was interrupted by a rude man demanding a toll. Olivia remained composed, noting the persistence of such behavior with mild disdain. As Sally panicked and urged her to avoid confrontation, Olivia calmly stepped forward and firmly told the man to stop, showing quiet determination despite the tension. He mocked her, sneering at the quiet dignity she carried. "Noble lady," he said, as though the title itself was a joke. But then the air changed. Hidden knights suddenly emerged at her command and began arresting the men. In desperation, one of the collectors grabbed a cloaked civilian from the crowd, pressing a blade to their throat, screaming threats into the street. Confusion spread through the knights. No one moved. The cloaked man, still held hostage, looked around in disbelief. Why hadn't anyone done anything? Who was in charge? Then he saw her. Olivia stood still, watching everything. Something about her presence anchored the scene. A sudden realization hit him. The hostage tried to break free. The man holding him froze, his grip trembling. In a flash, one of the knights lunged forward, pinning the attacker down with swift precision. The hostage was free. The cloaked man staggered toward Olivia and collapsed against her shoulders. Catching himself, he quickly stepped back, explaining that his legs had failed him because he was in trouble. Looking directly at her, he offered humble thanks, his eyes glimmering with honesty, even as Olivia watched him closely. There was something too graceful about the gesture. A single tear welled in his eye. Sally whispered, was it real or carefully placed? Olivia had already noted his refined posture, the quality of his cloak, undeniably noble. But she couldn't place him. Then recognition struck her like a cold gust. Black hair, red eyes, a name surfaced in her mind, Duke Edwin Vikander Lowell, the infamous war hero, the cold-blooded northern duke. Could this man really be him? Olivia stared at him, her eyes quietly questioning. The noble man held her gaze with an unwavering smile. Disbelief flickered across her thoughts. This person can't be that cold-blooded duke. But he remained calm, his tone gentle as he expressed his gratitude. And he looked around the bustling street and said he would repay her if only he could find his knight. Olivia studied him more closely. The fact that he'd arrived with a knight and not a mercenary made it clear that he was a new noble. More importantly, if he had been a true imperial noble, he would never have approached her so casually or looked so obviously lost. The cruel whispers echoed in her mind like a familiar refrain. Despite the moment, Olivia remained measured. She gently shifted the conversation away from the nobleman's overwhelming gratitude. She asked where he had parted ways with his knight. He mentioned a place marked by a fountain and numerous carriages. The description stirred Olivia's memory. Her thoughts quickly landed on the Garden of Four Seasons, a well-known landmark and popular meeting point for arriving nobles. After escorting him to the place, Olivia prepared to part ways with the nobleman, but he insisted on repaying her kindness if only he could find his knight. Olivia declined with a gentle smile, accepting only his gratitude. As she turned to leave, he expressed a wish to see her again someday. Olivia, avoiding his gaze, tried to dismiss the idea with calm detachment. Yet his demeanor shifted, no longer playful but sincere. He stepped closer and said he would have to rely on luck to meet her again. The warmth in his eyes flustered her, and to her surprise, she felt her own face grow warm under the weight of his attention. His words struck something deep in her, simple, genuine, and unfamiliar. Even her own fiancé had never spoken with such sincerity. She quickly reminded herself that the man was likely being kind only because he didn't know who she truly was. Pushing aside the fluttering in her chest, she maintained her composure, playfully warning that she had high standards and wouldn't accept just anything. He only smiled. Then, in a fleeting gesture, he reached out and lightly touched her hair enough to startle her heart. He said he was a man who coveted beautiful things, and thus everything he owned was precious. He assured her, in that same disarming tone, that she could look forward to it. Just as she departed, his knight appeared. The knight could hardly believe his eyes. The Duke Edwin Vikander Lowell, known for his constant clashes with Vice Captain Jade, was blushing at none other than the sibling of the very person he so openly despised. Back at the Madeline mansion, in the hush of an opulent hall, Olivia stepped through the large open doors. Sally, her ever-loyal shadow, bearing news with breathless excitement. Flowers had arrived, from the Crown Prince no less. Olivia took them in her hands, an elegant bouquet of violet blooms. Her eyes lingered on the petals. A strange feeling settled in her chest. They were the same kind she had received a year ago from him, simple, familiar, and quietly meaningful. She took the card and read the message. It explained the flowers' meaning for those who might not know. The end of my heart leads to you. It ended with a brief note. He looked forward to next Monday. Olivia stood still for a moment. The gesture was thoughtful. She couldn't help the soft smile that curved her lips. Sally noticed at once. She teased her gently. What had the sender written this time to bring such life to Olivia's expression? But Olivia's thoughts were elsewhere. A quiet reflection surfaced in her heart. Yes, this was the Leopold she had once known. A kind soul who thought deeply, who sent flowers not out of obligation, but from careful intention. There had to be a reason for his coldness now, some hidden pain or circumstance that bound his actions. Perhaps she dared to believe, if she continued to endure the shame, the whispered insults about her bloodline, he might someday find his way back to her. Maybe he would love her still. In the impoverished district of Turning Bell, on a street lined with forgotten souls, a girl named Liv came into the world. Her early years were shaped by the gentle love of her mother, the sole light in a world otherwise dim and uncertain. As the years passed, that light began to fade. Her mother, frail and weary, knew her time was ending. Despite her youth, Liv sensed the coming loss and clung desperately to the woman who had nurtured her. In her final days, her mother spoke softly to Liv, revealing truths she had long hidden, a father who was not dead but distant, a future that lay far beyond the street they knew, and the possibility of siblings and a grander life. Her mother's last moments were filled with quiet hope that her daughter would find happiness in a world far removed from the one she was born into. On the day of her mother's funeral, under a curtain of cold rain, Liv stood alone. A stranger arrived, claiming to have come in response to her letter. That meeting marked the beginning of Liv's journey into the unknown. The destination was unlike anything she had imagined, an opulent estate teeming with uniformed attendants and strict protocol. There, Liv met her father for the first time. The man who should have embraced her looked down with disdain. The reception was cold, unwelcoming, and riddled with tension. Liv immediately sensed she was not truly wanted. Within the mansion walls, she was introduced to Hazel Madeline, whose intentions were obscured by formality and politics. Gio, her father, called out. He reminded Hazel that she had promised never to send Athela to the imperial palace, but Hazel had only replied she needed someone else to send in Athela's place, and that's Liv. Whispers circulated through the corridors. The maids spoke cruelly of Liv's origins, her green eyes, her silver hair, and the street dancer mother she came from. They regarded her as an impurity within the noble Madeline lineage. Even as the butler greeted her with decorum, the malice in the air was unmistakable. The days that followed were filled with isolation and humiliation. Her nanny treated her harshly, forbidding her from leaving her room, claiming her mere presence disturbed the Madelines. Liv was blamed for tensions in the household, accused of disrupting what had once been a harmonious family. The maid's taunts turned to violence when her silver hair, so cherished by her late mother, was cruelly cut, erasing part of the identity she had left. Haunted by grief and struggling with rejection, Liv clung to memories of her mother. The warmth of the past felt like a dream compared to the cold walls of her new home. A few days later, hunger drove Liv to sneak out of her room despite fearing the nanny's scolding. As she wandered through the mansion's dim hallways, she tripped and fell, recalling a distant memory of her mother's gentle warning not to hurt herself. Tears welled in her eyes, reflecting the pain and isolation she felt. Suddenly, Hazel appeared and questioned her. Liv, overwhelmed and scared, tried to apologize, convinced by the nanny that she was to blame for the household's gloom. Hazel listened her silently. When Liv revealed the nanny's harsh words and guilt she carried, Hazel's demeanor softened. Kneeling, Hazel helped Liv up and brought her to a grand dining table, offering her food and kindness. As Liv ate, she explained that the nanny had cut her silver hair, claiming it brought misfortune and shame. Liv's voice was filled with guilt, still blaming herself for everything. Hazel reassured her, making it clear that none of what had happened was Liv's fault. The moment marked a subtle shift. The next day, the nanny was dismissed. Since that day, everything changed like magic. In the days that followed, Liv was gradually introduced to her new siblings. Ethella, a bright and cheerful baby, looked at her innocently. Hazel encouraged Liv to embrace the idea of family, 2 older brothers, a younger sister, and a new name to go with them, Olivia Madeline. Suddenly, Jade, the older brother, came running with excitement, calling out to his mother. Hazel welcomed him warmly, though he pouted about being sent to his grandmother's house without warning. She embraced him, easing his mood with affection. Noticing Olivia, Jade curiously asked who she was. Hazel introduced her as his new younger sister who would be living with them. Jade, playful as ever, pointed out she looked older than Ethella. Hazel explained that made her an older sister to Ethella. Jade accepted this quickly and greeted Olivia with cheerful innocence. But the moment soured. The oldest brother Conrad snapped at Jade, angrily rejecting Olivia's place in the family. His words were cruel, denying her as a sibling and calling her filthy. Hazel immediately scolded him, but Olivia had already flinched. Looking down, she wondered if her presence had caused this, if it was her fault he was upset. Since then, a long time has passed. 2 maids whispered about the Duchess's rare outing, speculating it was connected to the rumor that the Duke and Duchess were planning to divorce. Outside the grand estate, the family assembled. Hazel entrusted Conrad with looking after Ethella. Jade, noticing Hazel's coldness toward Olivia, silently questioned why Hazel hadn't given Olivia a kiss goodbye like the others. Hazel's expression flickered with something unspoken before she looked away without explanation. Jade pondered the awkward distance between Olivia and Hazel, wondering if Hazel was truly Olivia's mother too. Ethella eagerly affirmed this. Olivia watched the children, her heart torn between longing and uncertainty. Hazel gave Olivia a gentle pat on the head but withheld the kiss, promising only to think more about it after she returned. She then left, reminding the children to behave. After Hazel's departure, Conrad excitedly presented a fairy tale he had created for Olivia and Ethella, portraying them as princesses. Olivia was overwhelmed with emotion and began to cry, causing Ethella to cry as well. For a fleeting moment, Olivia felt a sense of belonging and family. That fragile hope shattered almost instantly. Conrad's demeanor turned fierce and angry as he blamed Olivia for everything, including their mother's fate. His harsh words struck deeply, leaving Olivia devastated and sitting on the floor, overwhelmed with pain. It was revealed that Hazel had died in a carriage accident on her way to secure a divorce, likely for her children's sake. In the aftermath, Ethella cried out in confusion, wondering why their mother hadn't returned. Olivia remained silent, knowing deep down that she was gone, carrying a profound sense of loss. After the traumatic day, Ethella became sick with a fever, showing signs of distress over their mother's absence. Olivia, deeply worried and sorrowful, silently comforted her by holding her hand. Gio suddenly appeared and forcefully dragged Olivia outside, unleashing his fury by blaming her for Hazel's death and the misfortunes that had struck their once proud family. His words left scars deeper than any wound. Olivia, devastated, began to believe that her presence was a curse. The warmth she had once felt from Hazel's brief care faded under the weight of her father's rejection. Since then, a long time had passed. Sally pulled Olivia out from the void. It was time for dinner. At the table, Ethella proudly told her brother Conrad that she had eaten everything on her plate. Conrad, amused but gentle, teased her, saying she had barely eaten half. Frustrated but playful, Ethella insisted she had eaten it all and wondered if this much food was normal when preparing for a debutante ball. To distract her, Conrad casually revealed that he had received a letter from their brother Jade that morning, but pretended she might not be interested. Ethella gasped, clearly excited. She then exclaimed happily how delicious the steak tasted that day. Seeing her reaction, Conrad relented with a smile and agreed to give her the letter. Ethella pouted and said he was the worst, reminding him that the whole family had been eagerly waiting to hear from Jade. But Olivia remained silent. Her thoughts were elsewhere, hoping, distantly, that Jade was safe. And she looked toward Conrad and asked if she could also pick up her letters. Conrad, ever sharp-tongued, responded with a smirk, telling her there was nothing addressed to her. Olivia looked down again, thinking that Jade must have been too busy to write too. Ethella tried to lift the mood by recalling Olivia's recent debutante ball. Olivia looked over, slightly taken aback by the attention. Ethella continued with cheerful enthusiasm, praising how flawless the event had been. Olivia's expression remained unchanged. She reflected on the words, uncertain whether they truly described her experience in the debutante ball. Her mind slipped to the past. She had entered the debutante ball with Leopold by her side. She wore a flawless dress, her waist tightly cinched, her hair and makeup done to perfection. Everything about her appearance had been carefully crafted, designed to be accepted, to be noticed. But just as the moment to dance arrived, Leopold let go of her hand and offered it to another girl. Olivia's heart sank. She stood there, devastated, watching as her fiancé danced with someone else right in front of her. The betrayal struck deep, but she couldn't allow her emotions to show. So she did what she had practiced. She offered a forced smile. All around her, nobles twirled in glittering gowns, their laughter filling the air. But no one came to her. No voice broke through the loneliness. She had become a part of the scenery, beautiful, still, and forgot. Later, Conrad's voice cut through her memories like a blade. He reminded her coldly to stay away from Ethella. Olivia flinched. She tried to explain herself, but the contempt in his eyes rendered words useless. She was not one of them, not truly, just a member, never a Madeline. He dismissed her. As she turned away, her heart quietly shattered. Her farewell to him, silent and sad, was met with nothing but distance. Conrad's thoughts were unspoken, but Olivia felt their weight. To him, she was a curse, a living scar that tore their family apart. He resented her presence, yet needed her absence. And still, he handed her the burden of a palace of duty, of appearances, something cold, something cruel. He read the final line of Jade's letter without emotion. Victory was near. He would return soon. He entrusted their father and Athela to Conrad's care. And to Olivia, there was nothing.